welcome back, everybody, to Security Live, a show about AWS security and solving some of those security challenges with our AWS partners. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ryan Orsi, and I lead a team in the partner organization called Cloud Foundations and Advanced Services. My other co-host is my favorites.
Hey, everyone. My name is Himanshu. I lead the team of our worldwide security specialists. We help customers and partners orchestrate native AWS security services and also help customers in their cloud adoption journey and their security outcomes.
Sounds boring. Sounds like you have got free time. You don't know what. Yeah, sounds terrible. Sounds terrible.
It's very exciting and very empowering every day. Hey, I forgot to mention on the previous iteration of our show today that this is our second year anniversary or second year post anniversary show. So we made it 2 years. I think that's
happy anniversary. Do we say happy anniversary to each other? Is that how this works?
I think this deserves a big round of applause for our producers, who behind the scenes do all the work, and who are the ones I'm referring to, mainly Anne-Marie Woodburn and the supporting cast that goes into making this show.
Don't forget Sharon of
Yep, Sharon.
Yeah, you and I, Rob, Marco, we just show up as hosts and talk. They make it so easy for us.
And I think it was a year ago we started the European chapter of this, so that our customers and viewers in Europe time zone can leverage the same benefit, bringing in partners and their insights as well. So big thanks to everyone who's been helping take this on this 2-year journey.
Absolutely. Cheers, everybody. And
yes.
Today, Himanshu, what are we talking about? What are we going to bring on next?
Hey, I'm very excited about today because, the guest who we have here is actually an ex-Amazonian. So it's always fun to, talk to ex-Amazonians. And here's Rich.
Rich and Velizar, welcome, gentlemen, to Security Live. I see you're from some place called Cloud Storage Security. Maybe starting with Rich, you can introduce yourself, and we'll go to Velizar afterwards.
Yeah. So name is Rich Vorwaller, Chief Product Officer at Cloud Storage Security. Like Himanshu said, ex-Amazonian. Himanshu gave me a huge favor a couple years ago when I was at Amazon, helped us get a customer on stage, which anybody who works in security knows how hard that is. So since that day, he's always been on my birthday list. So thank you, Himanshu, for having us. And then I'm joined here with Velizar.
And I'm Velizar. I'm coming in from the support side here at Cloud Storage Security. So helping all of our customers with anything that comes up, and also assisting Rich with just about anything from support to product to anything that needs doing at the end of the day.
Velizar playing tunes on that grand piano? Is that like part of the...
No, unfortunately not. No. I used to, though. I used to play, but not anymore.
All right. Well, good thing we're not playing any Bach here. So, we're going to talk a lot of security. And Rich, good to see you again. I think I remember the Amazon Detective days and, the Security Hub days and orchestrating guard duty and findings. We were actually just talking on the previous call about the extended Berkeley packets, with one of our partners. Okay. But putting that aside, tell us more about Cloud Storage Security and what's the organization about and how can customers leverage this?
Yeah, so we are a cybersecurity startup. We've been, I think, an AWS ISV partner, I think actually since launch. The use case that they kind of walked backwards from and helped launch the company was really about what we kind of call in-tenant data protection. So it's mostly about like malware protection or data classification, about data that like needs to stay or reside within your accounts. We call it kind of in-tenant. So instead of copying it or moving it, what we do is we actually give our customers kind of a stack that they run in their environment. And then they use that to scan like incoming data or even outgoing data. And it's usually for like highly regulated customers that for either compliance or just, the warm blanket feeling. They don't want to have kind of external connections. They kind of want to keep that all in-house. And so that's been kind of the big use case that we've had with our customers.
Very valuable use case. I mean, the proof that data didn't move about or wasn't accessed inappropriately by unattended actors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's all part of what your wheelhouse is in charge of there, Rich and Velizar?
We do some assessment, and we'll give them like, hey, here's some risky configuration settings, and here's some things. But really, our main use case is really, it's almost kind of that managed file transfer use case. So this is where customers like, hey, I'm opening up like an S3 bucket, or maybe even like a model to the world, and I'm going to accept data from that. So I know that data is a little bit questionable, and I need to have some checks in that. So most of our use cases around like really deep inspection of that data, and what kind of code does it have? We get a lot of use cases where they need to scan it with different engines, because they need to have like a fidelity rating to that, saying, hey, out of the 5 or 4 engines, this is what they classified it for. So what we see more often is like, I know that this is risky data, so give me kind of the deepest inspection you can of what's in it.
And it's all about minimizing that downstream risk, so that data doesn't end up in the hands of your employees, customers, partners, and creates risk on their end, on their machines, on their networks.
Yeah, and Ryan, I think we were just talking about this. Your timer can go off now, especially lately with generative AI, right?
8 minutes. 8 minutes.
This has become. I mean, talking to customers, like we see a lot of this trend ongoing, because one of the big concerns that customers have around this is that with all these agents interfacing with the data, and all these prompts interfacing with the data. And as applications go and coerce this data, like how can we make sure that it's sanitized, or in a way where either they're not losing that data in the process, like which could be sensitive, or privately identifiable, or PII, and or could be proprietary to that organization. And I think back in the day, like I remember, like maybe like a year ago, data governance was like sort of like the big use case, but now we're seeing data lineage, like like the ability to see where all the data is traversing and where all it's going. So it's very relevant. I find is that, Rich, like you guys hear from customers as a value?
We do, yeah. It was kind of interesting. Like if you look at like kind of data protection, even a couple of years ago, it was like, help me identify that sensitive data, and then make sure all the controls are in place that nobody has it. But now you're moving into the world where like, oh, I need to share this data. Like I'm going to use this data to feed it into my Gen AI application, or I'm going to extract some business intelligence, and I may have some contractors. So it can't always be like, I'm just going to put a wall around it. I need to share it. So I just need to see like what is transacting, what's moving, and then kind of give me almost like a real-time assessment of that. So yeah, we're definitely seeing that. And we actually did an integration with Bedrock to reinforce, to kind of help kind of highlight that. But also we've found some really cool use cases where Bedrock itself helps us better identify, what's happening, what is that data, and what is it going to do.
Oh, very cool. So you guys are not just extracting the data that's leveraged for generative AI, but you're actually using generative AI to do that as well.
Yeah. So a lot of the Velizar can probably talk better to this than I can. A lot of the use cases we get is like, once we find like some malicious code, typically the top 2 answers we get is like, what is that, and how did it get there? And so we support a couple of different engines. We have Sophos, we have CrowdStrike, ClamAV. And all of them have kind of a unique name for the files that they will find. And so it's a little bit cryptic. So what we did was we did an integration with Bedrock using Anthropic. And we said, hey, we want to take this hash, this file, pass it over to Bedrock. And then can you come back and tell us, what does this engine say it is? What are the remediation steps? So it's been really nice, because they can take that file, push it over to Bedrock. It comes back and it'll say, well, Sophos says this is what the file does. CrowdStrike says this is what the file does. Then here's the remediation step. So it like self-empowers our customers to kind of just do that own analysis on their own.
I was going to ask Rich and Velizar, what kind of actions can your product take, or is it do you recommend remediation steps, or do you actually have some actions that you can also offer people to, just like plain like stop file transfer, or isolate file, or encrypt it and push it into like a another bucket somewhere? What kind of actions do you folks support?
Yeah, Velizar, you want to take that? That's a great question.
Sure. In terms of actions for what we call problem files, out of the box by default, what we'll do is we'll quarantine that file away to a separate, for example, S3 bucket. And based on your findings, based on what you learn about the file and you analyze about the file, you can make the decision on whether you want to delete that file or send it back to the destination bucket where it belongs. Additionally, customers also have the ability to, if they wanted to, delete the file completely as soon as it's found to be a problem file as well. Or they can keep it in the destination bucket as well. We also offer additional analysis on the file, so you can actually detonate the object and see what it's trying to do line by line. So we offer all of those different
very cool. So you have some kind of like a sandbox runtime environment to go detonate. That's awesome. That's great.
Exactly. Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Rich, you mentioned, I think you said file transfer, right? So with regards to like how does object storage play a role in this? Like just for our audience, like is this when the files move within the file storage? Or can this act on data that's already residing and sitting in shares as well?
Yeah, you could do both. So the main use case we do kind of see is what we call an event driven. So that's where they're dropping an object in like S3, and then that kicks off a workflow. We use the normal queuing services, SNS, SQS, and then that will kick off a serverless task that will go and scan that data. And then like Velizar mentioned, if we need to move it or whatnot, you have that scenario. We do have another one. This has been really nice. We call it an API scan mode. So this is kind of interesting because the other mode, it's a bit reactive in the sense that an object has been dropped in S3 and you got to do something. We have some customers that are like, well, I want to actually prevent it from ever entering into my environment. So what we've done is we've leveraged application load balancer to stand up these API endpoints within a customer's environment. And then they can take that endpoint and write it into their application. And that way they could say, hey, give me a verdict on this file before I accept it. Or there's also another path where it's like, well, if it is clean, go ahead and deposit it into the S3 bucket that I want. And if it's not, go ahead and block that. So we see a lot of customers use that because if you ever been in like, we call this kind of like the resume builder website. Like if you ever had to like upload a doc or accept that type of data from like a third party or a client, you just know what it is. Right. Instead of like reacting to it, you could actually have that verdict before they're uploading it into your environment. So that's been a nice accelerator for us as well.
And the mode you called that, Rich, because this is a very active conversation and a lot of different meetings I'm going into very soon. What was the mode you called that?
We call it API mode, and the reason why is I mean you could go into an S3 bucket and drop and do that, but the reason is we give them an actual API endpoint, and they'll take that endpoint and they'll write that into their application. So if you click that upload button on your resume site, what that does, it calls that API. We do some really cool things with bearer tokens, so we make sure that it's authorized and it's within a time parameter. It calls that API, it says, hey, here's the file or the object that I want to pass. Either give me a verdict and I'll deal with it myself, or actually just prevent it from being uploaded and then it just gets dropped.
Nice. And it's really the best of both worlds because you have the option to scan files after they've entered your storage volume, or with API scanning functionality, you can scan them before they enter your storage volume. So you have a few different ways to get up and running really, really easily. Or if you want to go a little bit more in depth through the API scanning functionality, you can do that as well.
Right. It's like we started this off with earlier today talking about like Himanshu's like artistic capabilities, actually painting, but like this is an art and a science, and it's relative to people's comfortability with risk level. And I'm sure customers running under regulatory compliance laws, they will really enjoy this API scan mode. Others that are like, hey, I'm running some kind of a site where it's not as detrimental to me in my business. If something comes in, I'll fix it later. Totally different. So I like that you offer, the kind of a personal choice, but applaud you on the API mode. I think that's something we could definitely evangelize more, Himanshu.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, we were talking about this in relevance to Amazon Guard Duty. Like we heard from customers constantly that like they will and partners actually as well, so that they can leverage that and integrate into their tooling, which is this native scanning feature of S3 objects for malware, which was announced at Reinforce. Is that something that you're leveraging in the backend as well for this?
We are, yeah. So we use several engines. So we use, for example, Sophos, we use CrowdStrike, and then we also have an open source version of ClamAV. So I would say earlier this year, we have a great relationship with AWS, and they reached out to us and let us know, hey, this is capability that we're releasing in Guard Duty. Would you like to see if there's an integration? And so they gave us early beta access, which was awesome. We got to test it, and we're like, this is almost, to be honest, a little bit of like a different engine that we could support. Right. So the integration that we do with Guard Duty, and if you're not familiar, so Guard Duty released this capability at Reinforce, and it's very similar to the event-based driven scanning that we do. You drop an object in S3 that kicks off a process that scans that. What we were able to do is we were able to feed off those findings that get passed to Event Bridge, and then based on that, a customer can kick off a couple of different workflows. One is like, okay, Guard Duty has found this malicious. Again, I'd like to have maybe a second or a third verdict. So let's do another engine that scans that, comes back with that. The third is that it will do kind of a retro-based scan. So again, the Guard Duty is event-based kind of going forward. But there are some customers that have said, well, Guard Duty found something. Who knows what else is there? Is there any way that you can do a clean sweep of it? So we can kick off a retro scan that will kind of crawl the entire S3 bucket and pull that up. Then the other that we've had is the quarantine piece. So the Amazon team has done a great job of writing, I think, a blog post just like last week on how you could quarantine that with a Lambda function, which is awesome. Some of our customers, though, they just don't feel comfortable with that, or it's just something else they just don't want to manage. So we have that ability to say, hey, Guard Duty found something. Would you like us to go and quarantine it or do some analysis on it? So those are kind of the 2 or 3 integration points that we did with Guard Duty.
Right. No, I think very, very relevant. And like I said, I mean, that's really what customers want, is the ease of interoperability and integration, and then the ability to take an action on it right away as well. So I think this is a good building block for that.
Yeah, you sound like a very friendly tool to add into an environment, folks. Like I have this conversation all the time. A lot of folks that are in if they're an actual end customer of AWS, or they have a managed service provider or an MSSP involved, the idea of adding more tools into environment can be kind of a headache, right?
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
Process, who integrates with who. But in this case, it looks fairly friendly. Adding in cloud storage security, that use case makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we've tried to be as light as possible, because we got that same feedback, like, wow, deploying agents was really tough. We got to get that complete coverage. Standing up a VM maybe a little bit too cumbersome for us. So we use a serverless stack. We use the native AWS services. I mentioned SNS and SQS, but we also use Cognito for the authentication piece, DynamoDB for the table, all of which that customer can control. So, and we use the serverless stack for the compute. And it was all about like, let's not try to disturb that much. Like, let's keep it as lightweight and minimal as we can within a customer.
Yeah, that's very important. I think, like, especially I've heard, again, feedback from customers is that, they want something which can just natively integrate and not a lot of operational overhead and integration to get this going. So I think that's like a big value prop here for the solution.
Yeah. And AWS has made it really, really easy for us. So, a good example is, so we use ECS to run our scans. And sometimes we get these requests, we call them large file requests. They're like, to be honest, terabytes of file. So ECS and the Fargate memory can't support those much. So, but just this year, they released an integration with EBS where you could actually mount an EBS volume. And we were like, oh, golden. We'll just use that integration. We'll take that file, we'll mount it on the EBS volume, do our scan, tear it down. So that was another just like no-brainer for us, that AWS gave us a nice tool that we can leverage.
Makes sense. Is this something we can see in action, Rich?
Yeah. Let me, so what would be interesting? Well, let me do kind of the event-based. I'll give that to you real quick here. So let's see here. I can figure it out.
I think our audience always loves to see a demo or something in action, which would be great.
Yeah.
Make it real, right?
Yeah. We'll do. So here I've got, an S3 bucket. Hopefully you can see that okay. This is the bare minimum, event-based scenario. So once I kind of add up, and I've got a little folder here with a collection of files. Some are good or some are bad. So I'll upload that real quick. Now what you'll see here, it's giving me that total of 18 files, almost 8 big. I'll let it upload. Hopefully it'll be pretty fast here while I'm on camera as well. Awesome. So again, look at the total there. I have 18, almost 8 meg. As I get this, what you'll see here as I get into these, you'll actually see I'm down to 11. And so what has happened is as those hit that bucket, it's again just kicking off that workflow and starting to go in and scan the files. It'll give you a nice, again, if you're just doing kind of I just want to see what it is, it'll give you a nice tag here, let you know, hey, this is a clean file. Here's what the result is. But then what it will do is automatically put it over to what we call kind of that quarantine bucket. So if you go back to my buckets, and I had a big long one, so I'll have to do a little bit of a search here.
That's actually very cool that it auto tags the scan results.
Yeah, we wanted both clean. So we actually tag it on 3 levels: clean, unscannable, as well as like malicious. And again, the thinking there was the customer will have some logic downstream on how they would want to do that. As Velizar mentioned, we kind of copy that original path of the bucket of where it is. So you'll see that demo files here. So then if you're familiar with ECAR, it's just kind of the bare bones test file for malware. We'll come in here and then we'll say that affected as well. And then again, you can go into the console itself, say, hey, that isn't malicious, it's whatever, and it could move that back. So that's kind of that bare bones event-based driven scanning. The one I mentioned earlier was the API scanning one. So let me pull that up here. So that, again, is going to be kind of based off of your application. So the first thing you'll do is within the console yourself, you'll go and you'll create a user. And I'm showing you my password here. But what this is used to do is actually request that bearer token. And that bearer token is what you're going to use within your application to pass those files. So again, if you look here on this scan, what I'm doing is I'm putting in that API endpoint that it's spinning up on behalf. And then I'm putting in, whatever file that I want to have a verdict on or upload it. So if I run this, what you'll see is it'll come back with a verdict. You'll see the engine that it did, and then also the result of it. If I were to change this, so I'll go in and do just kind of another ECAR test there. We'll scan that again. You'll see then it'll actually come back and effective. And so if you want to do the upload, this is where you'll specify kind of what that S3 bucket is to run it. But it's going to be the same process. You'll run that. It'll give you a verdict, whether it's infected or not. The only difference is that file will not be passed on to S3 bucket. It's actually blocked here at the load balancer level rather than being uploaded.
Very cool. Yeah. And what about like file types, file sizes?
Yeah, good question. Velizar, do you want to take that?
Sure. As far as file sizes go, for example, our Sophos scanning engine can support files up to 5 terabytes in size, which is the maximum for a single object in S3 to be scanned. File types as well. Sophos will scan just about any file byte for byte, even if it's not on the official file type supported list as well. So we've had customers put a lot of different file types, a lot of different file sizes, terabytes, even petabytes through this in short periods of time, and it performs really, really well overall.
Do you all work in Europe? I'm just curious. Like, are your primary customers in the States here or in Europe? I mean, we have some very data privacy, data protection sensitive customers out there. I'm curious.
We have customers all over the world, US, Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and so on and so forth. And customers all over use us. As far as any types of data residency requirements, privacy requirements, the beauty of the solution is it's all done within your AWS account, within the customer's AWS account. So as Rich mentioned before, we're deployed in tenant. We as a company don't have access to your objects, to your deployment, to anything at all. You can lock this down, deploy it really, really privately. That way you and only you internally have access to it. In addition to that, the infrastructure that we stand up for scanning is stood up in the same region that the files are in. So the file never actually leaves the region to be scanned. And if a customer does have data residency requirements, that is able to help them meet those requirements really quickly, just out of the box.
You just made our European counterparts really happy there. Yeah, well, and I mean, seriously, there's so many projects, migration projects, even new application build projects too. This kind of thing can slow down the whole project. But now we know, right? There's definitely a partner out there in the world that's got this great use case solved. I love that it's all native inside the console, the AWS console. That's just fits right inside of their project, how they execute, how they work together.
Yeah. No, I think and not just global. I mean, some of our global customers have multi-region deployment, so I think like it'll be really cool for them as well. Rich and Velizar, like Ryan said, highly sensitive data. Customers who are very cognizant about compliance and regulations. Do you guys support GovCloud or government as well? Yeah.
We do, yeah. So we have a BYL version of that our customers can run in the GovCloud, and then as long as it's a AWS region and the ECS services and the Dynamo services and all that's supported, which is by far the vast majority of AWS regions, we can run in those scenarios.
Very cool.
Very, very cool. Hey, Himanshu, it's that time again, man. You
ready?
Yes.
Hey, you know what? So Rich and I have a past relationship, and there's some fun facts. I keep intact with coworkers and ex-coworkers.
Is it PG-13?
Yes. No, but Rich has a good inclination towards amusement parks. Isn't that correct, Rich? Yes. Yeah.
I do. So we used to live in Utah, and then during the pandemic, I was like, we gotta go move somewhere fun. So we moved down to Orlando, and it was all about visiting the theme parks. So if anybody's looking for an awesome theme park, Epic Universe coming out next year. Come on down. We'll do those rides. Yep.
Apart from cloud storage security, hit up Rich on recommendations. Yep. How do you get that? Maybe Rich is the new genie for.
I think your LinkedIn direct messages just blew up.
It's awesome. Yeah, we've had a good time down here. It's a lot of fun, and then I had a blast working with Himanshu, Matt, and others in the team. It was where I learned to walk backwards from the customer, so I'll never forget that.
And Velizar, you get a harder question, man. What's the last thing you bought on Amazon.com?
Ooh, I think it was toothpaste.
You can go to the store for that. I love it. Hey, that's amazing. It's too easy, right? Probably one tube. Someone drove that out to your house. Delivered it.
It was actually the next morning. It was on the front doorstep, so it was right when I needed it as well.
Nice. Fantastic.
Hey, next time we should get Velizar to play our intro ditty, or right on that grand piano.
That'd be fun.
I'll give it some practice.
Yeah, I come from a long family tree of musicians. It stopped right at my branch. Something in the soil. There's no way I could ever help you out there, Velizar. Anywho, Rich Velizar from Cloud Storage Security, thank you so much. Folks, don't forget to check out the full-featured free trials on AWS Marketplace for Cloud Storage Security. Until next time, we'll see you later, folks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.